Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Lady K Chat, a podcast that is designed for men and women to become better versions of themselves, which is broadcast every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Various subjects will be spoken upon, such as relationships, health and wellness, personal development, wealth building, children, and so much more. She is a 2-time Amazon best-selling author, an international speaker, and life coach. She is Lady K. And now for your host, Lady K.
Mama, see, I got a question for you, right? Because I know we talked about this off air. Before you got into your full, connection, your divineness, and you knew who you were and whose you were, and you was out there wanting to work. I know you said there was a time in your life that you fell into a depression. And I know before sometimes, like that's like in the middle, like, you went through your experience, you're here at this highlighted place is wonderful. But in that moment, because I know a lot of people go through it and they're like, everything she's saying, it sounds good. But did she ever have a moment where she felt like she wasn't worthy? Can you talk about that so they could also identify with you that you've been there and you have done that?
Let me tell you something. One night about 3:00 in the morning, I woke up. I heard someone calling me. And I sat up to get ready and answer. And I said, "Fool, you live by yourself." So I said, "God, was that you?" Because they couldn't have been. And the call was so loud.
Right.
That and it was coming from inside me. But at the time, until I kind of acclimated myself and woke up fully, I didn't realize that it was coming from within me. I thought it was coming outside of me. And once I realized it was coming from within me, wow, God was calling me. That's a scary girl. The next day I got up, I ran to, there was a Christian bookstore on 116th Street in New York. I ran and I bought all kind of Bibles. I didn't know what kind of Bible to buy because I didn't grow up in church. I didn't know anything about religion and that process and all that. So I bought the Woman's Bible. I bought the Old Testament, the regular Bible, the Saint what is it, King James. But I bought different Bibles. So I didn't know where to start. So I said, okay, all right. So I bought them and I had them. I still didn't know what to do with them. So I started going to church, and I would go, and because I am an empath, and I didn't know at the time I was an empath, it was shortly after I learned, but I went into church. I tell you, I had a little thing for the pastor. Dynamic man, just a dynamic man. And
I love it.
I'm keeping it real, I'm like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be his wife, I had learned he was divorced. I'm gonna be his wife. He needs me in his life.
Oh my gosh.
But once reality hit me that we were on two different paths and that we would probably never ever be able to come on one accord together, because I was strictly spiritual and he was very religious.
Okay.
And so one day I was sitting there and I heard him say something that was so outrageous that it blew my mind. And so me and a couple of women looked at each other and said, did he just say that? What he said was, if you're in an abusive, he was telling women, if you're in an abusive relationship with your husband or mate,
right,
that you should stay there because God is using you to transform him. I'm like, well, of course, the next day I called his office and left a message. That was like, oh God. I mean, that message could get women killed.
Right.
And never mind, I never got a response. Because see, a lot of preachers don't like you to check them.
Right.
Okay? They don't like they don't want you to check them, okay? Or question them in any way. So once I realized what I was dealing with, I didn't stop liking him, but I knew, no, that just wouldn't work. And I went on. I went on. But the bottom line here is, from that point, I started gravitating out, trying to figure out, okay, if church is not supposed to be where I'm supposed to be, what do I do? And I tell you, in the beginnings of our awakening, they're very scary, very scary. And I just didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going. And finally, at the time, I was director of women's health services at North General Hospital in Harlem, where I created the first women's health program, wellness program. It was based on an educational process. Okay. And because when I went to college, when I finally went back to school and got all of my whatever, then in college I majored in community health, so I got my degree. I got a BS in community health. Okay. And BS means Bachelor of Science, not the other thing. Okay, right. I got you. For people who not know, or people who don't know, and I developed a program and to help other women. Finally, one day, this was a few years later, I'm sitting at my desk and I hear a message that says, I heard an internal message again that said, if you don't get out of here, you're going to die. Wow. I'm like, what? But somehow I knew I was being guided out. Now, here's a program. I made big money. I lived wonderfully. I had everything that we're told is everything to make you happy in life. Absolutely. I had the co-op, the fly car, the mink coat, the jewelry, everything that they said is what you to be happy. Right. But somehow I felt a lack of fulfillment. There was something missing. So we had gotten letters from our human resources office saying that that I qualified for the buyout. So I knew when I got that message, it was time for me to move on. And I did, but I had not a clue what I was going to do. And so my plan was, okay, with the buyout money, it's only going to last me, according to my income, for 3 months. Wow. To get me through the summer, 2 months. Right. In September, my plan was in September, I'd start looking for another job and move on. Well, 9/11 happened in September. Everything shut down in New York. Everything. Everything. I guess God was really trying to get my attention during that time, because I ran out of money in September. Wow. By October, I had no money. But October to May of the next year, the roof stayed over my head, the light stayed on, the phone stayed on. Wow. I eventually had to give up my car because I didn't have money to make the payments. And it was time for the lease. I always got lease cars because I wanted to be able to change my car every 3 years. So right. The lease was up. I turned it in. I didn't try and get another one. And I started trying to figure out where I was going from there. And during that time, I went through the worst depression ever. I became a consultant at one hospital, and I worked as a PR and public PR and marketing person, as well as health educator at a local clinic, community clinic. But one day, walking home, it was a dark, dreary day. I looked around and I had planned to leave. I had planned to commit suicide. And so I could walk home from where my job was. So I looked around. I'll never forget. I wanted to see everything for the last time. Wow. When I got into my house, I got a glass of water and I got the pills, the sleeping pills, and I began to pray. And I was asking God, please help my family to understand before I did this. And what I heard from God was, if you do this, your daughter, Tiffany, will never forgive you, will never forgive herself, rather, because she had given me the sleeping pills to help me sleep because I had not been sleeping well. And so when I heard that, I realized that if I used those pills to kill myself, my daughter would live with a sense of guilt for the rest of her life, and that could destroy her life. So I didn't. Wow. So I was angry at God at that moment. And I had a third bedroom I had never done anything with in my co-op. And I went and balled myself up in a fetal position, laid on the floor in a corner. And I refused. I said, you want me? Okay, I can't use the pills. I'm just going to lay here and die. Mm. And what happened from that point on was like I said to you earlier before we came on air, it was one day I want to be able to tell that full story about what happened, because I went so deep within myself. It was like God had just snatched my spirit up out of my body. My body was an automatic pilot, I think, at that moment. It was just on an automatic pilot. And the place where I was so beautiful. It was almost like the Garden of Eden. And in that place, there was a calm and a peace like I had never experienced. Wow. And I wanted to stay, but I heard God say to me, if you don't return, many will die. And I didn't understand exactly why many would die, because I didn't come back. Spiritual. It was spiritual death. People would die spiritually. And then once the spirit dies, the body begins to follow suit. It begins to deteriorate. And people don't realize you got to have good spiritual health so that your body can survive in this physical state of being that's only momentary. Right. We've got to start paying attention to our spiritual health, our spirit health, because the spirit within us is what's keeping us going. But some people have become so egotistical or ego-driven, right, that they think it's all about them. They suffer from what I call the me, myself, and I syndrome. Mm-hmm. And they're easy to pick out. They're so easy to pick out. Right. Their energy, you can read their energy. I can read people's energy, and I can feel their aura when they're in my presence. So I know when I'm in the presence of a healthy spirit, and when I'm in the presence of someone who may look good, but right, their spirit is funky. Right. You know? So let me tell you, I mean, it was the worst time. It was the worst time, but yet the best time, because God helped me to segue through all of what I went through and then grow closer to him so that I'm able to receive the directions and the power that we each possess. But right, you gotta grow closer. The closer we grow to God, and I think I said this to you before we came on air, our natural nature is love. The closer we draw to our natural nature, the closer we get to God. The closer we get to God, the more our spiritual powers begin to kick in and enhance. Absolutely. But we've got to start focusing on our spirit being within us, because you see, after the body is dead, that spirit being comes up and out because it no longer can do anything inside that vessel.
Yes.
So we have to begin the process of not just thinking we're all that in a bag of chips because we look good, we smell good, right. We got a mansion, we got a Mercedes, we think we're all that in a bag of chips. No, we're so much more than what we even perceive ourselves to be.
Absolutely.
But we can't know what that is unless we make that direct connection to God. And when you ask God who you are in the spirit, once you're ready, he'll tell you. And let me tell you, when he told me who I was in the spirit, and let me tell you, he told me I was on a bus. At the time, I was working as a consultant at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I was closing out their women's center. And I was on the way to work. And God, God knows when and where and how to deliver messages to us.
Yes, he
and
did.
And I kept saying, well, who am I? Who am I? And when he told me who I am, because the only thing that matters is who you are in the spirit. The rest is just a temporary whatever. It's just a temporary
temporary
whatever
time.
it is.
Right.
All of this is temporary.
Right.
But who we are in the spirit is what truly matters. And until you know who you are in the spirit, you don't really know who you are.
Absolutely. Woo, Mama T, you done. Listen, you done said a mouthful. I love this. We actually sat here for a minute and you just poured out everyone from your beginning to the middle to the ending. And I know God is not done with you. Can you tell us about the work that you're doing right now on the Sistership Talk Show?
Let me just say one more thing.
Sure.
When I moved here, I sold my co-op, got a nice little bit of money.
Okay.
We moved here. And that's when I had almost a complete breakdown. I was still in the midst of that depression.
Right.
And I had found a good doctor here, Dr. Georgine Sibbering. Oh, I love her. And every time I went to her, I'd be crying. And the last time I went, I was crying. So I started crying before I even got in the door and I couldn't stop.
Wow.
And she said, okay, I have a female psychiatrist I want to send you to. You need to talk. You need to connect to someone who can help you. So I went to this psychiatrist. She put me on some medication. I was on that medication for about 6 months. What I realized was that sometimes depressions are caused by chemical imbalances.
Right.
And what happened was, from all the stress from my childhood to that point where I came here, where the stress was no longer on me the way it was, I was one ball of stress, and it had created this chemical imbalance that was causing the depression.
Depression, right?
And after I did my time with the sucker, and a lot of times most times when I went in and talked, I talked. She just let me talk,
right?
Because I think she realized what I needed to do was get it out. And all the programs that I designed, because I'm a program designer, all the programs I design are based on giving women the opportunity to just talk. Because a lot of women don't have anyone that they can talk to, even if they have families. A lot of times you can't talk to your families. You don't have anybody.
Right.
So every program, from the program I designed at the hospital, the Women's Health Education and Resource Network at the hospital, to Sister Chat when I got here and got myself back on track and started letting God guide me, to the ladies' room. And now my daughter and I, let me tell you, my daughter has taken the sistership to a whole new level. I may have created the foundation, but my daughter is building the building. I mean, when I look at the things that she's doing to advance the sistership, and take it to levels I never even imagined, because see, who the heck knew the technology was going to take over?
Right.
And my generation, most of us are lost when it comes to technology. My
Right.
daughter, whatever she doesn't know, she takes the time to find out. And she's like a ball of fire. There's some days when she said, Mom, blah, 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 Mom, blah, blah, blah. She's yelling, yapping stuff at me. And I'm like, Tiffany, give me a break. I gave up multitasking years ago, and multitasking will cause your brain to burn out real fast. So sometimes I have to slow her down because I don't want her to burn out. Right. And that was one of my challenges too. I kept burning out because I was one of the best multitaskers that hospital had ever seen.
Definitely guilty for that.
Yeah. And let me tell you, and one of the things I want women to understand, multitasking, that superwoman mentality will cause you to continuously burn out. And I was the quintessential superwoman. I mean, whenever they needed something very strategic done, it was give it to Deborah Coffer, give it to Deborah Coffer, And I remember one of the hospital's attorneys who lived in my building at the time, I heard him say to my boss, who was the CEO of the hospital, how did she do that? Well, I did that because first I said, well, God, how am I going to do this? And I got the answer from God. I mean, this brain, people take for granted.
Right. One of the greatest tools ever.
One of the greatest tools. And this is how God speaks to us through our brains. Absolutely. But if you won't use your brain and you're just superficially operating and moving through life, then you're not going to maximize your potential and opportunity. Right. So because I didn't have anyone to think for me as a child, I always had to think for myself. There was no father around. My father only came in late at night when he snuck into my room because after work, he was a chef. And he and his boss at the restaurant where he worked, a seafood restaurant downtown, they would sit at the bar, play the horses and drink. So he'd come in and, that's when blah, blah, blah. And when we left out in the mornings, he would sleep. So there was never any real guidance. So I learned to use my brain from a child because I had to do that to survive. Multitasking is not always a good thing. You can do it a little bit here and there, but to continuously multitask, I'm warning every woman who's listening or anybody, if you're into multitasking and you thinking that's making you all that and then some, sooner or later, you're going to burn out. Yes. And that's what happened to me. I kept burning out and I didn't realize I was burning out.
I co-signed to that because I did the same thing to myself. And I never forget one time my mentor told me, in order to be successful, you have to learn how to do one thing at a time. I'm like, well, how can I do one thing at a time? I got so much to do. It didn't dawn on me until later in life I understood what he was saying. So yes, I'm the same way. I learned that you will burn yourself out. I did that and I'm not going back to that. So I love where I'm at and I'm at peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And whenever Tiffany starts throwing stuff at me, whoa, I stop it. I have to do one thing at a time because I don't want to burn out again. And at this point, at 66, I'm not trying to end up in a nursing home somewhere with dementia because I done burned my brain out, dementia and Alzheimer's because I done burned my brain cells all out. Right. I want to live the best I can live for the remainder of my life, serving God and serving others as best I can. And I can't do that if I'm not in my right mind. And again, constantly burning out will cause your mind to totally flop, bloop, I'm out, and so there you are, you have no understanding, no guidance, no direction because your brain no longer has the ability to process on that level. Absolutely. So it's very important. If people don't get anything else from this dialogue today, they need to understand that you got to take care of yourself. Okay. And multitasking is not a self-love, self-caring process. That it's a do everything for everybody else and play Superman or Superwoman process.
And you
Okay.
forget yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got to start nurturing our spirits.
Yes.
We've got to start fertilizing our spirits with love. And that love begins with God. Loving God, God teaches us to love ourselves. And once we love ourselves, nobody outside of us ever again can mistreat us. Because we'll be able to read them. And if we're not reading them correctly, God will correct us. Bottom line.
Wow, Mama C, thank you for all of that. Again, you done said a mouthful here, but I do have one last question for you before we leave, because we are running out of time, but I'm having a great time with you. But I do have to ask you this. For the person that's seeing this today, if they are still struggling, sharing or telling their story or what happened to them, they've been sexually assaulted, what advice can you give them right now to let them know that they are worthy to, to be here and they have a voice? What would you recommend them, the first step for them to do, with them going through this challenge?
Stand up, find the courage to stand up for yourself. Because there are a lot of us who've been there, done that, and made it through. And then there's a lot of us who didn't make it through because they didn't find the courage to stand up for themselves. We are spiritual beings in the midst of a human journey. And until we connect fully to that spiritual being within us, we will never have the power we need to live the caliber of life we were created to live. We can't be made in God's image and live like bums or crumb bums or be, less than what we should be or less than what we were created to be. Yes, there's a lot of craziness that goes on in the world that we're in right now. Absolutely. But the goal is to get through it. And the only way you can get through it and rise above it is to make that solid connection to God, so you know what you're dealing with, the who, what, when, where, why, and how to's are what you're dealing with at all times. And let me tell you, that's peace and that's happiness.
Thank you so much, Mama C. And if the people wanted to reach out to you, can they follow you on social media?
Yes, I would recommend that they connect with the Sistership. SISTAHSHIP on Facebook, because we have a whole tribe of people who are part of our network, who have come together to support one another, to love one another. And it's one of the best experiences ever. And you can also connect with me on Facebook as well. It's Deborah, DEBORAH, Coffer at Facebook. Find me at Facebook. You see my picture, that's me. Connect, friend me for the right reason, because if you don't friend me for the right reason, you're not going to get in. Okay, so connect to the Sistership. There are plenty of programs and shows and support and all the things that will help you find your courage, your strength, and move in ways that you never before thought you would be able to move.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mama C. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you took something from today. This has been a great experience. This lets you know that you are not alone out there, and there are people that's supporting you, that's waiting to support you. We are here with open arms. So again, thank you. Share this, like it, comment, tell us what you think. Continue to follow us at the Lady K Chat Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can find us on our website at www.ladykenterprisesinc.com. And again, K is spelled K-A-Y, www.ladykenterprisesinc.com. Everyone, you have a great night, and thank you for listening.
Lady K.